Engine Performance 2 Test 7 is out. And, you know, it's really something how if you're dealing with your electronic stuff or your even engine repair stuff and engine performance stuff, they're always talking about charging system stuff and batteries and all that for some reason.
I don't understand that. But anyway, I gotta find out. Just that F-150 come in. I changed the plugs before like 2 or 3 months ago, and I replaced one coil. Alright, this time it come in, it was missing on number 6. Pulled the coil out, had water on top of it. Intake wasn't leaking, nothing like that. So, you know, the end of the coil was daggone whatever had rust on it. So I swapped it and number 1 out and drove down the road. Didn't miss, didn't do nothing. So I didn't know what to do other than put a coil in.
Yeah. Well, typically, whatever, was it missing on 6?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But not when I swapped the coils around. It wasn't missing on number 1 or number 6.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how much different things work when you, sometimes you can just shift stuff around and you'll say, well, it's missing before, but it's not now.
Yeah.
You know, and it's crazy how that works. I'll tell you something else that'll happen sometimes when you get these misfire codes. Mm-hmm. It'll tell you it's misfiring on 5 when it'll actually be misfiring on 2.
Yeah.
Which is irritating as all get out.
Well, I had the Sunder contribution test come up.
So you're doing good on that, but and Michael got some good equipment over there too.
If he would have left me his keys, I'd have been in the woods.
Yeah. All right, now then, let's jump through this test right here. Number 1, and we're gonna sound like we're beating the batteries to death with like a dead horse.
Why are they always?
They always worry about that the battery is the hub for everything, and the charging system is super important on any and all of this electronic stuff, including and the most complicated part of the electronics on any car is what it does with the engine. You know, your suspension and your body computer stuff, you know, that's moderately complicated. But basically the dynamics of what it does with the engine, with the timing and the fuel delivery and all that stuff is really important.
You jack a car with airbags on it one time and forget to turn the airbags off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I've done that a time or two in here on that black Crown Vic. We raise it up. You set it down, it's sitting on the lift, and you got to turn it on and wait till it pumps back up and all that. Now, if the door is open, it won't usually make any corrections. You know that? If you leave the door open, you know, why is that?
Because you don't want to get out.
Well, you don't want to get out and have it lower the door onto the curb where you can't get the door closed. You know what I'm saying? And all that. Have you ever got in a car and had it bite the curb where you couldn't get the door closed?
Yeah, pull forward.
That's probably because you're large and the springs squeeze when you get down there. All right. The battery high rate discharge load capacity test is being performed on a 12-volt battery. We're beating a dead horse here. We've talked about this a couple of days ago. Technician A said, this is burning it in, though. They got us questions here that weren't on the other test. Technician A says that a good battery should have a voltage reading higher than 9.6 while under load at the end of the 15-second test. That's right. Should be more than 9.6. If it's going below that, you're going to have issues. And it's not a strong battery. Technician B says the battery should be discharged the 2 times the CCA rating. We've been there. Everybody should know that. That's A, right? Normal battery drain for a vehicle with a computer electronic circuits, it's what? Now, that's something that wasn't on the test the other day.
And it's 20 to 30 milliamps?
Well, 20 to 30 milliamps, yeah. As a matter of fact, the old rule of thumb that I used for years was greater than 50 milliamps is too much, and it will kill the battery pretty darn quick, like within a couple of days. Incidentally, he's talking about batteries and stuff. That Buick out there starts really good every time I've started it, but that lady says that when she drives it somewhere and she parks it, and after she's been driving it and it's hot, when she gets in it, it makes it sound like the starter's bad or something. And you know, they've got both of the starters. They got a rebuilt starter up there, and they've also got a brand new starter. Brand new starter is $9 more than the rebuilt one. You know, no brainer there.
You know what I do?
Yeah, you get to. But anyway, we don't know yet that it's a starter. But he said it sounds to him like a starter when it does this. And so, and it's only got 70,000 miles on it. It's an 06 model. Look at that. You know. Did you know that a starter will wear out on a low mileage car when it ain't got very many miles on it? Why? Because they start it more. You know what I mean?
How do you know that?
Well, my wife had a Tempo that had 28,000 miles on it after she drove it for 8 years. She drove it to the bank and back every day. My wife don't put no miles on her car. She's got a 06 Explorer now with 20,000 miles on it. But the fact is, usually the first thing that wears out on her car is the starter.
Yeah.
As far as the miles that's on it, she starts it a heck of a lot. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right. Now then, that's just that's a generality. That's a principle, not a
I
precept.
don't know what it is about women, but they be driving by the store, see one person's vehicle they know, and they'll make a 90-degree turn at 85 mile an hour to get in there.
When jump starting, what? The last connection should be made where? On the engine block of the dead vehicle, right?
Sure.
Technician A says a discharged battery, lower than normal battery voltage, can cause solenoid clicking.
Yes.
Technician B says a discharged battery, dirty corroded battery terminals can cause solenoid clicking.
Both of them.
Either one of them can.
Neither?
Either, EITHER. Whenever I was, I went by Winn-Dixie that day, and I said they were trying to start this Buick that was sitting out there, an old Buick, and this little old lady that kind of looked like Sharon was out there. And
I'm a big old lady.
okay. Anyway, what happened was they could not. This thing they had really what looked like pretty decent jumper cables hooked up to this thing, and
You have to go and get your power lines for you.
and it was going run. And so I said I went in there and I came back out. Sorry about that. You gonna put it on the desk for me, right? And said, "Oh, don't throw it on the floor." Anyway, he says. So I went and got my jumper cables. I said, "Let me get my jumper cables," and I said, "Let me get my jumper cables, and I'm going to try it out." You guys listen now. So I went over to my car, and I got my jumper cables out, and I grabbed them like this, put them on there. Of course, they're a big, heavy jumper cable I built to jump off diesel tractors with, and it fired it right up. Well, see, they've been trying for half an hour to get that thing started, and I told them, I said, "It won't cost you anything. Let me just try this." And it fires it right up. Hey, by the way, Jeremy, I've got that $81 cable that you can put on that transmission today.
You ain't heard about that thing, dude. Matt jumps in the truck, cranks it, it won't idle. She blames that on him. I'll go up there and look under in the.
Well, that's not the way. That's not the way she came across when she was talking to me. What happened was Jeremy reached under there trying to rev it up, and he grabbed the detent cable and went snap. Oh, sorry. And then she couldn't drive it because with the detent cable unhooked from the transmission, it's going to burn the transmission up.
What'd you break?
Right?
What? I didn't break nothing.
It sounded like he said you broke.
All you have to do is take responsibility and say, "Look, hey, my bad, I broke it." Okay?
I would take a spot, but I didn't break it.
No. I didn't break it. You're making it up as you go. All right.
Anyway, that white Dodge sitting right there. Mm-hmm. Me and Matt had to work on it, so we ran out of the parking lot trying to find that darn thing. We go there, we crank it up. It doesn't idle.
What the?
I just fixed that thing yesterday.
The reason it doesn't, the reason that they don't idle on a Dodge, if the battery goes completely dead, it forgets everything it knows about its adaptive idle learning.
Yeah. She said it ain't. It's like she said when I parked it was loud and it must be
Exactly,
out.
until she left the lights on and the batteries went dead.
Yeah.
Then it lost all of its adaptive memory, and it's going to have to either have the throttle body cleaned and put back like it was, or it's going to have to be driven around so it can learn how to idle again.
So she blamed Matt for it.
So Matt gets blamed. There comes Matt. Okay. All right, Matt. We're just getting started. Come on in.
What up, Rambo?
Yeah. Hey, your sunglasses are on top of my
Man, we
computer
was
desk.
talking about that dang Dodge. Didn't that woman blame you for that truck not idling?
Yeah.
Well, we blamed him for breaking the detent cable. Well, he was sitting there. Oh, sorry. $81 later.
Yeah.
$81.
That's what it was. $81. You got to be put in there today. Parts out here.
I like to hear it.
All right, now then, slow cranking. Listen up. Hey guys, you're turning into a circus in here. Let's get through this. Slow cranking can be caused by all of the following except what? An open neutral safety switch is not going to cause slow cranking.
No cranking.
Yeah, we're going to no
It kind
cranking.
of will on my dually. If you don't got it, if you can have it pushed almost all the way to the floor, it'll barely turn. But you push it all the way to the floor, it's going to
You could make a case either way for that. All right, listen up. Let's see. High resistance does what? Means what? High voltage drop. Voltage drop meaning how much you're losing at a connection. How an acceptable charging circuit voltage on a 12-volt system is what? 13.5 to 15, not 12. Come on.
I don't know where I don't know what I'm talking about.
Technician A says the voltage drop test on the charging circuit should be performed only when current is flowing. Any voltage drop test should only be performed when a current is flowing. That's just the way that is. Technician B says the leads of a voltmeter should be connected to the positive and negative terminals of the battery to ensure the voltage drop of the charging system. Pardon me? That's Technician A.
That's a confusing question.
Yeah, that was a dumb thing that he said there. Okay.
I got to show you a picture or something.
One time, And you can actually say stuff like that. I had a shop foreman. It was really pretty smart. He really was. He kind of looked like Slim Pickens, and he talked like him. His name was Philip. And he came over there one day, and whenever he would get bored, he would come and look and try to start some kind of a discussion, you know. And so he went over where I was working, and on these motorcraft carburetors, they had a wet float level you could set. You could take the top off the carburetor, and you could set the float level wet. You could crank the engine with the top off the carburetor and see the float level, and you could adjust the float level, and you were supposed to measure how far it was from the deck on that carburetor down to the fuel.
That's a good thing about the motorcraft carburetor.
Yeah. Well, and those little suckers were easy to rebuild, and they worked real good and all that. We always liked those things. But anyway.
That's the idle.
My car had a lolly on it.
Yeah, they do that sometimes.
Burn up.
Yep, they'll do that. The bearing goes bad, and the plastic pulley comes all to pieces. Yeah. But anyway, this is what he did was he walks over here, and he was under the impression that all of these motorcraft carburetors were just alike. Right? You know what I'm saying? And he says he's under the impression they're all just like. So he says, set that float level on 3/4 of an inch. And I said, that is not going to work on this one because the deck for those little Venturis is machined lower than that, and it's going to cause it to flood if I set it on 3/4 of an inch. And he'd already determined in his own mind that every single one of these carburetors, if they were that kind of carburetor, were supposed to be set on 3/4 of an inch. Well, I set it on 810 thousandths. Which was what? Is that more or less than 3/4 of an inch? How many thousandths of an inch is 3/4 of an inch?
75.
750. Yeah, 750 thousandths. So I set it on 810. And so he kept wanting to argue about this. No. He said, set it on 3/4 of an inch.
I would have done this. Watch it.
And I told him, I says, Philip, and he was fairly easy to confuse. He was sharp as a tack, but sometimes when I would say stuff the right way, he would lose track of what we were talking about. And so I said, that doesn't apply to this car because it's got an exhaust heat control valve and a heat riser on it. And he really couldn't parse what that meant as far as the float level was, but he knew the exhaust heat control valve was right there by the carburetor.
What's that mean?
What's
that mean? I don't know about carburetor.
Well, it didn't have anything to do with the carburetor, but he was confused, and so he says, oh, okay, well, and then he walks off. So anyway, I basically baffled him.
What does that do?
What, the exhaust heat control valve? The exhaust heat control valve is actually, you've noticed on these 350s, you built these 3.8s, right? They got exhaust gas that goes across through the intake, right? Underneath the carburetor. That is actually made for early fuel evaporation. That's so that it can warm up right there where the gas is coming out of the carburetor. If that metal is cold, some of that gas is going to try to condense right there. Oh, okay. So you want that to be good and hot, right? Now, you got a heat riser on the older cars. They kind of did away with that, back in the early 90s, late 80s. But it would actually close one side of the exhaust going out, that seems counterproductive, but it forced a lot of exhaust to travel through the head, through the intake manifold, and go out only that one side. And then what that did was it heated the base of the manifold up around the carburetor really hot so that the fuel would vaporize better.
That's pretty cool.
Now, some of the little Escorts, they had a carburetor on them. They had a little electric grid under them. When you fired it up, that little electric grid would get really hot, and that was the early fuel evaporation. The old 70 model LTDs, and back in those vintage with the 390 in them, they ran heater hoses so that they had a water passage going around the carburetor. So the heater hose went right there. You might even see the heater hose come up to the carburetor, the base of the carburetor, and go around, and then it goes out so that hot water, before it ever went to the heater core, would warm up the base of the carburetor. That was early fuel evaporation is what it was all about. EFE, they called it. But the exhaust heat control valve could open and close that passage, and it also had a heat riser, which seemed to me like it's sort of like a double whammy. But they wanted to control it. Well, anyway, that confused the shop foreman. But y'all also got a good little, this is engine performance, so what the hey. Somebody told me one day, they called me and they said, I got this truck, this 84 model Ford pickup that's set up in a barn for about 7 or 8 years, but it still cranks and runs good, except the carburetor gets so hot that gas boils in the carburetor while it's running. And I said the heat riser hadn't moved in all them years, and it stuck shut because it had a little bimetal spring that opened and closed it, and it was rusted shut. And I said, if you'll break that loose where the exhaust can flow out both sides, see what I'm saying? All right, now then.
That's pretty cool.
I sort of got off on a tangent there, didn't I? Sorry about that.
Not really. I didn't know that.
Yeah. All right. Now then, whenever you get over to Michael, when you see him again, and when he gets back next week, say, okay, Michael, did you tell me about early fuel evaporation? You know, and he may be confused too because he's, you know, he's young too. He's younger than my daughter. Okay.
Yeah, but he used to.
Yeah, he reads and studies all that stuff. Well, he's sharp. I know that. I mean, he's got a good head on his shoulder. Testing the electrical system through the lighter plug using a digital meter can do what? What can you read from there? Charging system voltage. Come on.
What's a lighter plug?
You know where you plug in your cigarette lighter? Or the pre-charge plug for your cell phone? You know what? I wonder if there's a cell phone app you can get that will give you that. I bet there is. All right. The maximum acceptable AC ripple voltage is 0.400 volts. That's 400 millivolts. If the starter turns slowly when engaged, a possible cause is a defective solenoid? Not hardly. A Warner defective starter is the only good answer. An open ignition switch is not going to do that, and neither is a disconnected battery cable. If it's
Loosely connected.
Yeah, loose one, but not disconnected. Disconnected is the word. You got to read the word that's there, you know, and go with that. You can, you know. Technician A said, have you ever seen, let me ask you this, have you ever seen a car just quit running going down the road because of a loose battery cable?
Yes.
Just plumb quit. You going down the road. Just completely quit.
Happened to me in a truck at 350 and driving down the road, battery cable come loose.
Yep.
I was done.
Okay, let's jump back into this thing now. What?
Wake me up till 7:30.
Yeah. What question were we on? Sean, you're always a laugh. Sean's always a laugh a minute. G Greasy, we're on 10. 400 millivolts. Yeah, the starter turns slowly. We pass that one. Number 12. Technician A says batteries can be tested with an ammeter to determine the state of charge. Can they? No, they cannot. An ammeter ain't going to tell you the state of charge of the battery. That's hogwash. Technician B says the electrolyte level should be checked if possible. Which technician is correct? Yeah, B is right, but on most batteries nowadays you can't check the electrolyte. You can't check the electrolyte on most of them. Years ago, the old timers used to put aspirin in the battery.
Why?
No, it's acid. You know, makes it help make it be strong.
Just a bottle of aspirin in it?
No, just drop one aspirin tablet in each cell. I'm serious. They would do that.
I think like aspirin should be like
Aspirin's acid. It's made out of willow leaves.
Out of what?
Willow leaves. So
It should be illegal.
I may be making out other stuff now. I may be talking out of my head.
All right, look.
Number 13, Technician A says all battery connections should be tested for corrosion. Technician B says the battery cable should be checked for corrosion and replaced as needed. Which technician is correct? Both of them, really. Let me tell you what happens on some of them GM cars. It's got the side post batteries there.
I hate them.
Yeah, but they're not. They're here to stay, so stop whining. Okay. All right. He's in full whine mood. All right. What you can do, you got the cables right here on the the GM cables. They screw into a. What is the thread pitch on that screws in there? You remember?
Don't know, but it's pretty big.
It's 3/8. That's what it is. It's a 3/8 coarse threaded bolt. All right. You can take this Midtronics tester that we got that tells us how many cold cranking amps is in the battery. Mm-hmm. All right. And you can take and connect it to these bolts that are visible there. And just, you're not really, you see the Midtronics people are saying, disconnect the battery, hook it directly to the post. Right? And it's going to give you a true cold cranking amp reading. But what you can do is you can connect it to the cables, and it may read crappy cold cranking amps, like 120 cold cranking amps or 240 cold cranking amps when it's supposed to have 540. Then you can take those off, and when you measure it, the battery will read normal. See, that just means you got dirty connections. And that is really a good tool for that, but a lot of times people don't think about that. But if it measures crappy cold cranking amps out here, you're going to need to clean those cables anyway. And these are difficult to tell when they're dirty. You got to take these off. A lot of times you don't take them off. You take them off and say, oh, look at that. Have you ever seen that? You ever take off where they look really clean? If you're just looking at them from the outside, when you pull them off, oh, this is horrible. How did I miss that, And we did one time. We put an engine in a car. And it was an out-of-sight, out-of-mind situation. The battery in that Chrysler, whatever, not the Sebring, it was the Concorde, I guess it was. Battery's down there in front of the wheel, buried down there where you don't even see it. And we did all the unhooking from up top. And so we got it. We dropped the engine in the car. We got it running. And the students did it really fast. It was a good job. But the next day, the car wouldn't start. And so we got back over there. When they finally got down to the battery, the cables were badly corroded. And they didn't check that when they put the motor in the car because the battery wasn't even where you could see it. Here's another thing. The 29-point inspection, like a lot of times these dealerships will have you do an inspection. They want you to do an inspection on every car. I don't care what you worked on it for. If you did a tune-up, you put spark plugs in it, you did brakes, they want you to inspect everything. And anything that needs doing, they want you to flag it for the customer's safety. All right. So some of the mechanics get tired of that. And so what they basically do is they go check, poof, turn it in. Okay, so this one boy who shall remain nameless, well, he was a guy that me and Donnie sort of collectively trained. But he got this Taurus that he had to do something on the inside of the car. I don't remember what it was. He had to do something. He had to replace the instrument cluster or something. And he didn't pull a battery cable or nothing. He just replaced the instrument cluster. So he gets done with it, checked off all of his stuff on his checkoff sheet, pulled it outside. And it just so happened when he got in the car, when it started, he had to jump it off. When they opened the hood, there was a squirrel nest on top of the battery. And he got in some hot water, not for just checking. See, I had another guy that graduated from here, and I put him in a dealership in Enterprise. And he stayed over there for about a month, and then they let him go. And I called the service manager. I said, why did you let him go? He says, he knew how to do the work. He did good work. He did the work fast. But he would not fill out the inspection sheets. He says, I warned him 4 times. And he just absolutely kept turning those things in, and he just wouldn't fill them out. He said it took too much of his time. He was in too much of a hurry, and he didn't think it was anything he needed doing because the cars were all nearly brand new anyway. He wouldn't fill them out. He said, so I had to let him go. He said he didn't make any mistakes. He didn't do any bad work. He did good work. He did it fast. I liked the work that he did. But when he continually ignored me when I told him not to fill out the inspection sheets, I sent him on his way.
That's stupid.
Well, that same kid went to work at the Nissan dealership, and about the time he got some pretty good cash flow at the Nissan dealership, he's working in the parts room over there. They bought a brand new Chevrolet pickup. Brilliant. And that was when cars weren't selling that good because gas was $4 a gallon. And they found a reason to let him go. If you're going to buy a new truck, buy it from the place where you're working. If you want to keep your job and you're working at a car dealership, I mean that's a slap in their face.
I mean, really, you could get it cheaper once you could anyway.
Yeah, I mean they're not going to tell him we're firing you because you bought a Chevrolet pickup. Yeah. They fire him for something else. Hey, you're mopping up some milk somebody spilled, and we don't like that. Get out. This kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? All right. So anyway, you left your honey bun wrapper on the brake table in the.
They can fire you for no reason.
In Alabama, they can. Yeah. And they can look at you cross-eyed. And, that's it. You're fired. Get out.
You're fine. Get out of here.
All right.
Those eyelashes on your
but good people are hard to come by. Good mechanics are getting harder and harder to find. And I want to tell you guys are really learning how to do some good stuff because there's fewer and fewer people that even know how to troubleshoot it. Wes says that there's cars that comes from all over the place to Michael's place where nobody could figure out, and it's really simple stuff that's wrong.
Really simple.
And why are these other shops are making money every day, but they are apparently, I don't know which shops they are or who owns them, but they're bringing them over there, and it's stuff that they should have caught, but they just, if it's not push, pull, snap, click, they're not ideas.
This guy brought us a 2012 F-150. Put a lift kit on it. About a month and a half later, it starts clicking. There's a click running. He takes it to the Ford dealership. Barely, but I'm here. Takes it to the Ford dealership.
And?
So we left something loose.
And left something loose?
Said we left something loose.
Oh, said y'all left something loose.
They didn't leave anything loose. Thought we left the tire rod in loose. Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't take the tire rod in at all.
Yeah.
All I did was took the shock down, put that cone on top of it, put it back up in there.
Yep. That's all it takes. Well, then there's,
Pretty much. That was all it really was.
Yeah. What was it? It was
you can put a cone on top of the shock.
Yeah, so you didn't have to take a tire rod in loose because you left it loose?
No. And it's the vibration. You can feel it when you put it in gear and you accelerate a little bit. And as soon as the truck, you get under the truck, you can see the transfer case shaking.
Yeah. Yep, you got some issues there. That's a 2012. All right.
Maybe someone will fix it, what it is.
Yeah, that's right. Technician A says battery load test loads the battery to 1/2 of the CCA rating. Technician B says a good battery should be able to maintain higher than 9.6. We've already been there. Nope, not 25 seconds though, 15 seconds. Okay, you got it?
So it's there, right?
They want you to burn that in. Half the CCA rating at 15 seconds, it should stay above 9.6 volts.
13.
Can you remember that? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Technician A says all battery connections should be tested for corrosion. Technician B says battery should be checked for corrosion. We've already done that. That's C. That's C. Which of these tests assures the state of charge and capacity of a battery? Conductance test. Conductance test. That's what my little tester does in there. That little tester, is really so cool. I bought one of those to use at home. That's a different model than that one in there. But my wife says, hey, we need to be able to check our batteries. I said, okay, I can do that. So I went on Tooltopia and I bought one. That little tester costs about $350, by the way. It ain't cheap. Technician A says a voltage drop test of the charging circuit should be performed when current is not flowing. Wow, that's a rehash of a previous question in a different way. You're supposed to do every voltage drop test with it flowing. Technician B says the leads of the voltmeter should be connected to the positive and negative terminals of the battery. Why did they put that question in there twice? That's going to be a D, a dog. Neither technician A nor B is right about that, and I don't even see the point in those kind of questions. During the load testing, everyone ought to be, somebody ought to be right. During the load testing, battery voltage should not drop below what? 9.6, right? Okay, let's go on to question 18. Oh, we have a picture. That's cool. We have a photograph. We got a picture. We got to show our YouTube audience the picture here that we got here. You'll be able to do that. Your picture's not in color because I made that one on the copy machine and it's in monochrome. I have red and black and blue on mine. Okay, now then, what test is being performed in this illustration? What test is being performed in this starter amperage draw, buddy boy?
Oh, really?
Yep, that's a starter amperage draw, is what that is. Okay, this voltage reading was obtained while cranking the engine. This one right here. All right, look at that. Look where they're doing. Now they're checking from ground. No, wait a minute. Yeah, look at it. What are they doing there? What kind of test is that?
A ground test.
That is a voltage drop test, right? So that's too high. Look at that. 816 millivolts. 816 millivolts of voltage drop, not good. You got that? That's too high. You got it? Oh, another picture. Oh, don't you just love the picture? Let's look at the picture later. Okay. What test is being performed in this illustration with the engine running?
D.
Which one is?
D.
Alternator output voltage drop test. That is actually a voltage drop test on the charging circuit.
So
You see where they're hooking up?
Is it D there?
It is actually a dog.
That's the one I did the other day on the
That's right, exactly what you did. He did it on the. Incidentally, he jumped ahead of y'all. There's one of those worksheets I gave out that has you check the charging system on several cars. And if you're a motivated person, you can knock that sheet out in 30 minutes and have another one off your clipboard and in the rack in there. Now, Zach is going to have to really work overtime to get caught up from last week. But, all right.
What kind of charging thing are you talking about?
There's a sheet that you got on.
You look it up and then you do a voltage drop test.
Can you do that on like any vehicle?
You can do it on. Well, you got to do it on several vehicles. A bunch of them. You can do it on your own if you want to for one of them. All right. Now then, let me get the test date. We're gonna make that a